a more stable economy, and a reduction in poverty rate since the assumption of Bola Tinubu administration as president of Nigeria. Expectations are high amid some reforms already initiated by the government that are receiving accolades far and beyond.
Well, Nigeria's experience with high inflation, naira depreciation and devaluation, dwindling foreign reserves, and a rising public debt, of course, is estimated by the Debt Management Office to be some 37% of the country's gross domestic product. Many would say leave a lot to be desired.
Exactly, and although it is obvious the current administration is desirous of turning around the economy with recent measures, including unification of foreign exchange rate and the signing of new executive orders to address multiple taxation in the country. Observers believe one area of priority should be cutting the cost of governance.
No question about that, because it is common knowledge that Nigeria's cost of governance is exceptionally high, and this has been so over the years, and fingers have continued to point at the bloated bureaucracies of equally large ministries, agencies and departments of government that have become, some would say, a clog in the wheel of Nigeria's progress. In 2012, the Oronsaye report was submitted with recommendations for the abolition and merger of over 100 government agencies and parastatals.
The report revealed a high level of competition among several overlapping agencies, which had not only created ill feelings among government agencies, but also brought about unnecessary wastage in government expenditure.
Analysts are also of the view that serious implications abound when there is a misallocation of funds due to what they believe to be the anomaly, unlike what obtains in some other countries they have cited, including India, where an e-governance system is in operation largely.
Yes, in 2022, reports from the World Bank indicate that 96% of Nigeria's revenue was debt servicing, thereby relegating development and social services to the background. Little wonder some of the factors highlighted as contributing to the governance cost include unduly long convoy of vehicles on the entourage of state executives and public office holders.
Now, other items of expenditure are usually unjustified purchases of luxury goods and services, superfluous increase in the number of government agencies, payroll fraud arising from the phenomenon of ghost workers now largely in the subnational entities, as well as some have also argued the jumbo pay of political office holders, all directly at the expense of the taxpayers.
Almost 2 months since the emergence of this government, concerned Nigerians rather are clamoring that if any meaningful progress will be made, President Bola Tinubu must cut down on the number of appointees and strengthen public financial management reforms.
Well, that of course also applies, Kirian. The argument goes to the states and local governments, because if the federal does it and there is no equal or commensurate response from the state level, then of course how much will be available for real capital projects and ultimately growth and development of the economy. Nigeria is said to be amongst the 8 economies with the lowest human capital development in the world, and is ranked 167th out of 174 countries on the World Bank's Human Capital Development Index.
That's not a good one, Kingsley.
Absolutely.
That rating is far below expectation. Well, with 60% of the low levels of overall spending being absorbed by public sector salaries and pensions of ex-governors, ex-presidents, and growing interest payments, fiscal space for implementing projects remain highly constrained. How then can the present administration strengthen financial management reforms and reduce cost of governance? We shall probe into all of that as we make progress in today's program. My name is Kirian Umayo. Welcome to your Good Morning Show.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague to also welcome you to the program. We are broadcasting live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority and from the nation's capital city of Abuja. In the course of the program, we'll have our regular complimentary segments. a business newspaper review, and others. For now, the highlights of the morning news, and here is Zenret Dingmon. Morning, Zenret.
Good morning, Kingsley. Kieran, here's the morning news. President Bola Tinubu is back in the country after a 2-day visit to Guinea-Bissau for the 63rd ordinary session of ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, with another feather added to his cap as the new chairman of the sub-regional body. The president arrived at the presidential wing of Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport. Since he took the saddle as the president on May 29th, the summit is his first international engagement on the African continent. Apart from reflecting the level of trust reposed in him by leadership of other member states, the election of President Bola Tinubu also affirms the status of Nigeria as the biggest economy in Africa, with the enormous responsibility of leading the way for economic prosperity of the region. Before departing Guinea-Bissau, President Bola Tinubu had given a commitment to run an inclusive administration geared towards stamping out terrorism and other forms of insecurity in the ECOWAS sub-region. The Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has restrained the Independent National Electoral Commission from prosecuting the suspended Adamawa Resident Electoral Commissioner Hudu Yunusa Ari over his declaration of Aisha Binani Dahiru, the All Progressives Congress candidate, as governor in the March 18th poll. In an interim order, the presiding judge, Justice Donatus Okorowo, gave the order following an ex parte motion to the effect. The respondents in the suit are Independent National Electoral Commission, Inspector General of Police, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Counsel to Aisha Binani Dahiru, Michael Andoka, SAN, while moving the motion, argued that until the Election Petition Tribunal decides his client's fate in line with Section 149 of the Electoral Act 2022, the prosecution of Mr. Yunusa Ari cannot be valid. He said the decision of INEC to file an action against any person involved in Dahiru's April 15, 2023 supposed declaration as winner of the supplementary poll in the state, when the tribunal was yet to determine the petition, would deprive the petitioner the provision of Section 285, subsection 6 of the law, which gives 180 days within which the petition filed on May 6 should be dispensed with. After listening to Andoka SAN, Justice Okoro ordered the parties to maintain the status quo pending the hearing and determination of the substantive suit. Justice Okoro, who adjourned the matter to July 18, 2023 for a hearing, equally ordered the respondents to show cause, while the relief sought by plaintiff should not be granted. Nigerians from all walks of life have been enjoined to close ranks and join hands with President Bola Tinubu to intensify the fight against corruption. Nigerian key players in the judicial sector made the plea at a webinar at the instance of the Rule of Law Development Foundation with the theme Setting Agenda for the Tinubu Administration.
This business of corruption, there can be no shortcut. Media trial is a shortcut. Taking confessional statement is a shortcut. We have to reboot.
Major actors in the production industry are advising Nigeria to drive its diversification policy through mobilization. The private sector with favorable tax policies and efficient energy supply to boost production and trade. They note that these elements will reduce cost of production and enhance healthy competition for economic growth. Nigeria is experiencing a momentous change towards its energy evolution path, anchored by the decade of gas and the resolve to create a just, affordable and sustainable energy system. Group Chief Executive Officer NNPC Limited Melo Kyari, while declaring open the 22nd edition of the Nigeria Oil and Gas Energy Conference, says It is convened to discuss and debate strategies that will increase investment flows into the country, enhance industry operations, and promote international partnerships.
This gathering is Nigeria's foremost international energy conference. It has a theme, Powering Nigeria's Sustainable Energy for the Future. This gathering draws policymakers, regulators, and leaders from private sector to discuss Nigeria's vital energy agenda.
Those are the news highlights for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kieran.
All right, now youths in agriculture emphasize the importance of beekeeping in Nigeria to enhance food security and increased agro revenue. Let's now get details from Alika Obanachi Arua on Business News.
Youths in apiculture have emphasized commitment to beekeeping to increase local production and exports, saying bee products have high commercial value globally, especially in the non-producing countries. The farmers remarked that there are some deficiencies in production, storage, handling, and packaging, which makes their output unfit for the export markets.
There's a lot of things need to be done. We're still doing things in an old ways, and then in the modern beekeeping, we use modern tools. But in Nigeria currently, we're yet to have a national policy, even on the beekeeping, and even to look at the way the bees can help us in terms of the food productions. We have not been able to use all those opportunities.
They therefore called on the government to put measures in place to help smallholder farmers through improved access to markets, adequate financing, better water, pesticide management, and the development of improved products.
We should be all inclusive for all the agricultural value chains. We have different types of value chains. Those for we in the beekeeping sector, we also should be included.
Let's take a look at Monday tradings on the floor of the exchange. With Business News, Alika Obanachi Arua.
Many thanks, Alika, for the business news package on Good Morning Nigeria. Up next, we'll take a look at some of the front pages in today's newspapers.
And here we have Chukwudi Okoliwaja, our newspaper reviewer, and he's back again as always this morning. Chukwudi, it's good to see you.
I should welcome you. I'm here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
I know.
You're popping.
That is
that's welcome, Kirian.
That is us.
Good morning. How are you? Kingsley, how are you too?
I welcome you.
No, that's your giddy guy of Good Morning Nigeria.
Hey. All right, now let's go to the papers. We have three of them here. Blueprint, New Telegraph, Kingsley has Punch, and here we go. Blueprint first. Let's take Blueprint from top to bottom. Development of natural dyes will save billions in foreign equivalent. That's according to Raw Materials Research and Development DG. It's on page 21. Ill health. Akeredolu extends medical leave on page 13. Malnutrition. 1 million Nigerian children die annually before age 5. That's the CS of Sun. Now on page 7 as well. Now let's go to the lead story on the Blueprint. Plateau attacks get bloodier. 8-month-old, 22 others killed. 2 riders to that. Troops recover rifles. Berum youth. McBan Trade blames. Of course, Berham Youth and McBam Trade blames. Now, McBam is an acronym for another organization. Now, REP advocates self-defense. JNI urges caution. Okay, it's on page 6 of the blueprint. Now, below the photo story, septuagenarian commits suicide over health challenges in Osho. It's on page 5. Court stops prosecution of suspended Adamawa wreck. It's on page 15. Nigeria capital inflow drops by 6.8% first quarter 2023. Now, on appointments, we hope, pray, Tinubu patronizes APC, according to Adamu, laments abduction of Ekiti party chairman. It's on page 6. So let me quickly run through New Telegraph before you come in. I've read about the Akeredolu extending medical leave indefinitely. It's on page 2 and 3 of New Telegraph. Obori sacks revenue chiefs, orders government properties retrieval. It's on page 2. Committee on Mobile Police Reform submits report to IG. Plateau killings, defend yourselves, Rep tells constituents. It's on pages 5 and 30 of New Telegraph. Now, NYSC certificate, federal government sues Taylor Odua for felony. Debutu, 9 others arraigned for vote buying. It's on pages 5 and 7. Fuel pump price may rise further in Nigeria as Russia plans new output cuts. 4 riders to that. Tompolo's Tantia Security intercepts massive vessel with stolen crude. NNPC confirms seizure of 800,000 litre capacity vessel with stolen product. Main oil thieves aren't used scooping oil with jerrycans, according to traditional ruler. PCFPC chair urges federal government to suspend 7.5% VAT on diesel. All right, South Africa, Nigeria, top world's youth unemployment. It's on page 3. Diphtheria, protect yourselves, everyone at risk, federal government warns. It's on page 2. Goldman Sachs, India will overtake US, become world's second biggest economy by 2075. You can read that on page 5. Insecurity, Ohanese, Southeast governors, lawmakers to meet Tinubu. Brunu Iswap bans farming, fishing, herding in stronghold areas. That's on pages 2 and 6. All right, court halts suspended Adamawa Rex prosecution. All right, Kinsley.
Okay, Kyria, let's take a look at the window page of the Punch newspaper. Above the nameplate, you have the following headlines. It's illegal for National Assembly to fix members' pay. That's according to former President Obasanjo. EcoBank asks FBN stands for First Bank of Nigeria, to reject Otudeko's share acquisition. Tinubu can't appoint everybody minister, says Adamu, who is chairman of the APC. Lead story, double-decker headline says fuel smuggling persists in borders despite subsidy removal. That's according to the customs boss. Customs CG rejigs border patrol, orders crack down on fuel smuggling cartels. NNPCL intercepts Cameroon-bound vessel laden with 800,000 liters stolen crude oil. Well, if it's crude oil, then it's not measurable in liters. It's refined products you measure in liters. Crude oil, therefore, will be in barrels. Lagos Airport runway lights stolen, 7 suspended. Fayose will pay for working against Atiku and PDP. That's according to a NEC member. NLC meets governors over fuel subsidy palliatives. Dollar video, submit yourself for trial, group tells Ganduje. Niger governor sacks political appointees, dissolves boards. Page 14. Chukudi.
Thank you, Kinsley. You submit yourself for trial. Has the investigation been done and the particular charge, identified? Anyhow, I just heard that and I thought I should throw in something. Obasanjo is talking. He says it's illegal for National Assembly to fix members' pay. And he intones or insinuates, maybe that's a better word, that the lawmakers should not usurp the duty of the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission. And I ask, Kingsley, you might want to give us depth there. Is it really their pay they fix or the allowances that, they put together for themselves? Anyhow,
I think let's contextualize this.
It's okay.
What the former president was saying, he was speaking at Ado-Ekiti during a public lecture commemorating the Diamond Jubilee of the call to bar of Chief Afeba Balola, leading senior advocate of Nigeria. And he was saying that, look, lawmakers are custodians, as it were, of the law, because they also they make the laws, and they also superintend, by way of oversight, and that they pay for all political office holders and appointees and all. And usually the pay will be fixed by the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission.
Yes.
That it is not just the salary, it is also the allowances.
But the allowances are included.
Yeah, the allowances are also fixed, and the last time this was done was in 2007. For example, they will tell you your ESTA code for certain categories of officers. If you are traveling, how much extra code are you entitled to? If, for instance, assuming you are a special advisor, you will be entitled to the equivalent of, say, a director or a deputy director, if you are a deputy director in the service. A deputy director in the service will be level 16, and a director is level 17. So you go to the books, what is it that a deputy director is entitled to, or what is it a director is entitled to? So that's how you measure it. But when Obasanjo was kicking against the apparent arbitrariness in fixing these allowances, and these are part of the sources of leakages and even high cost of governance.
And nobody's challenging it. Anyhow, I like the way we threw it up. Let it be looked into. NLC meets governors over fuel subsidy politics. I like meeting governors being highlighted, because when these things happen, the focus seems to be solely on the federal government, as if the states are not going to be part of the politics. If there's going to be a pay rise for workers, for instance, states are also going to have to pay those salaries, and you might want to consider, let's say that the pay is fixed at a particular figure. Is it all the states that are going to be in a position to pay that figure that eventually gets rolled out and all that? So I like the fact that NLC is going to the states and stopping this mono journey, unit journey, I hope my English is not distorted this morning, of going solely to the federal government. I like it. Let them even go to the local government chairman. This practice of thinking that everything has to concern the center and all that, it hides the governors. It hides those who are actually closest to the grassroots. So I like that.
Yeah, I mean, you see, in this country, I've always harped on that, sometimes we are planless, in terms of how we, configure what we do as a nation. Well, when you say, like, when we had the 30% increase in salaries, not all states have paid that, up to this moment.
That's true.
Right. And for me, if it's true federalism that we are practicing, to some extent, it should give some, autonomy to certain things. For instance, you cannot earn the same salary if you are in Sokoto, for instance, in level 10, and then someone from River State, which is an oil-producing state, for instance, Delta, Edo, those who have 13% derivative and all that, they could negotiate to pay their own staff
You're
higher.
talking about cost of living.
Exactly. So in different places, right? So
an employer told me that.
Exactly, and that's what is supposed to be under normal circumstances. But the issue of trying to unify, because we're now used to everything coming from the center. The decentralization or devolution of power that we know about, that's practiced in every democracy, is not working the way it should work here because of individualistic tendencies. Some persons in authority will tell you they will do things that they personalize official things just to make gains. That is what is going on.
No, but let's be clear about the idea of, say, a national minimum wage. It's to legally fix the lowest limit for the shop floor that no individual who is engaged in formal employment should fall below. You can rise above it, but don't fall below this. Nationally prescribed. You have, in advanced countries, you have it. Where, for example, the pay is on an hourly basis. You would say $5 per hour. That's the minimum wage. Yeah. There are persons who could earn $150 per hour. But minimum for categories of employers who are affected. Anywhere you go, don't pay any person less than that. The whole idea, of course, is to also protect the worker, so you don't create serfs, you don't create slaves, persons whom you cheat. Because one of the things we must recognize about employers generally is they want to maximize their profit, minimizing their costs.
You're talking about creating a situation where life is livable for people. This is the threshold you're not going to fall under. But the fixation is that once it is announced in Nigeria, everyone keys, that's what happens.
Yeah, there's something what they call the so-called relativity. That is the, I mean, we're not discussing minimum wage, but let's not get in there. That is the whole problem with the civil servants. That's it. But they now say, look, a level 3 officer cannot earn, on the basis of the new arrangement, more than a level 4 officer. That's it. No, can a level 7 and more than 8. So you have to impact the entire grade level so that you move, and then you move everybody up. As you are moving people up, the cost of governance is also rising. We might not have time, gentlemen. There's an issue that we have touched on briefly in the past, but not directly. And the story is not here. I read it last night or yesterday evening. Governor Babagana Zulum of Borno has placed a ban on the activities of scrap metal scavengers. I'm sure we'll see them in various neighborhoods. Scrap metal scavengers.
Call them their names so we understand. Bababola.
Babambola. I don't know that, but scrap metal. You see them. Some of them having a chain of magnets, which they are using to collect scrap metal. But the instigation for what the governor did was that some of the so-called scrap metal scavengers were vandalizing government property.
Oh, yes, of course.
Vandalizing infrastructure, including transmission towers.
It's a guise for many things.
A guise for many things. Because in the past, if you remember, say in the 90s, all these carts, all the cart pushers who were disposing of refuse in Lagos, were using their carts to ferry weapons for armed robbers until they stop them from operating during certain hours. So what we find is that in most cities these days where you have these scrap metal scavengers, they are not, some of them are involved, I believe, in the vandalism of public infrastructure where they are looking for metal. And it is not just the public that suffers. Kieran, I'm sure you must have seen the video. Some of these persons are also now vandalizing private property, where, for instance, you have an undeveloped plot and there is a gate and that has been erected, and that gate is metallic and there are weeds grown over it, and the place is not frequented on a regular basis.
Yes.
Over time, these same characters will go there, rip out that particular gate, and then cut it away.
I see. This is just what I call a synchro system. Those persons you see are also working, because elsewhere across the globe there are scavengers. Many of them are useful too, because the metals that they pick that people throw away are also used for recycling. But then the other dimension is that there's always a criminal element, in whatever that people do. Right, and I've also seen that happen in my neighborhood, where Bambola was accused of taking something away. But then there was an insider who was a security person that connived with him. So they don't do that alone. For instance, if you have a structure or undeveloped or still being developed, you have to monitor that, you have to provide security for that. Right. So what they're doing is done elsewhere. But the point is, when the criminal elements engage in such things, we may not have to generalize, because those people are also surviving on that. Elsewhere across the globe, people survive on that, on scavenging. Most Africans who live in Europe survive on scavenging and all of that. So that's a natural thing. But for him to ban it...
What's your point?
Does that offer up excuses for them?
It doesn't.
What I'm saying is that you don't remove them entirely from the system, because they're also contributing in the economic system, in the ecosystem. They operate.
Okay, so how do you watch those who are stealing?
They're always insiders. No Bambola can enter federal ministry without a security person who will connive with him to get that done, because that's not his area. He's not familiar with the place. So if he does something, then somebody must have.
Is it complicity you're pushing?
I am pushing.
Or legality of the act?
I am pushing that you don't say that they should not exist. That is what I'm saying.
No, the governor. What the governor.
Consensus that they're a nuisance.
Precisely.
Exactly. Among them, exactly. In other professions, there are also bad elements. That's what I'm trying to point out.
Even in journalism.
Exactly. So
that's not. It's not a profession.
For me,
scavenging is not profession.
No, scavenging is a way of life to survive.
It's done
everywhere.
No, it's not a profession.
It's done everywhere. It may not call it a profession, but somebody survives on it. You know. And all that.
No. Kirian, what is your point?
My point is that you should not bar them entirely from operating.
What is their relevance?
The relevance of that is that those persons are surviving on that. Some of them are married. Some of them are married and they have children in school. And that's what they're doing, because what they have reduced to that.
There are people surviving on pilfering in offices.
Excuse me, that one is different. I'm sure you have friends who live abroad. Ask them what they did when they came in there. Most of them did that. A doctor told me that he was picking from dustbin in America for over 3 years to survive as a student. So people do that. I'm saying that there are bad elements.
He couldn't find a job at McDonald's that he was scavenging.
People do that to survive.
No.
But they don't let you break the law when you do it abroad.
No, when you steal, it's different.
Look, we are here in the Federal Capital Territory. You have seen manhole covers around the city that have been removed. Who did those ones? You have no clue. Is it complicity of the law enforcement agents? Certainly not. What we are saying is that, look, even private persons, you have seen your grill cover, metal grills over your over covers have been removed by some of these metal scavengers. What could then happen? Put it this way, hang on, Kirian. You cannot, if you make a prescription, in my opinion, you will say that metal scavengers should not be seen operating beyond certain hours, or they should operate within certain hours.
Exactly.
But what the Zulum has done in Borno is to set a freeze on the activities of these persons.
For now.
That's why it's a freeze now. A freeze will thaw. When it thaws, then it begins to flow. So that is what should be done, but not to justify it and say because it is a means of living, then we should allow it to happen, unless they have not done it to you personally.
Do you know that residents
for your and you know metals are very expensive.
Do you know that residents look for them to dispose of some metals in their houses? They pick some money from them because they pay for it. They pay for it. You don't have to pick. They pay. Some residents will start call look for Pambola for me. I have some things here to dispose, and they dispose it. So it is also working. So what I'm saying is that there are criminal elements in everything we do in life. There are criminal elements in whatever we do in life.
Well, that's an indication for you to stop. So that that's an indication. Kirian, that's an indication. But I also hope. Let's bypass now. I also hope that our colleague Kirian has sufficiently rested. Because you recall that we discussed this yesterday, Chukwudi, that the whole Mesoma incident.
It actually sent me a message to say this girl scammed every one of us. He was in a rage, you know. Kirian sent me a message. It felt very bad.
It felt very bad. But he's here to admit it. It's not for you to build.
I don't have to extend our time beyond our time.
Alokutos. He got his nose thoroughly bloody. And I hope that.
I'm still alive and I'm here, you know. So don't crucify me yet, you know, until I come with it. But see, this young girl.
There's something I see about it.
This young girl deceived many Nigerians. Many. Now, professors, eminent persons, scholars, you know.
Let's not gloat over it.
Let me tell you, it is about a society. Because we have painted a scenario in this country where leaders...
You're starting another one.
No. I'm just concluding. Politicians, senators, House of Rep members, governors are all involved in forgery in this country. And what are we telling the younger generation? Ms. Wama was just a victim of societal decay. She was just trying to play, and she has brain. So what I'm saying is that she did wrongly, and somebody must have given her support. Let me read what somebody wrote here. Ms. Wama may readily have come across a victim because of her age, but being a product of a society that has gone down to such an abysmal level where inferiority is choosing over above merit, a society that tolerates mediocrity and one that pats people on the back for wrongdoing. That is what is going on. So we should stop that all these, engaging the younger generation the way we behave does not work for us as a society.
Yes, Kirian, our time is up. So, we should show a good example to upcoming people.
Exactly. Nobody will encourage
but at the gates of heaven and hell, wherever those are, nobody's going to say, God, please permit me because my mom pushed me into sin. I'm not going to hell, please. My mom caused it.
Exactly.
Every man must speak for himself at the end of the day.
We call it a day here, and some governors are still battling with forgery as we speak, and these are the things that we're talking about. So,
but that's no justification.
Nobody justifies evil.
Yeah. But you justified it.
No, the society.
You should apologize for that. Not the society. I'm part of the society.
No.
Chukwudu is part of the society. So Chukwudu said, let's get the facts, and then you were busy yelling. You should apologize for the wrong position you took.
See, many people.
The audience out there, Kirian. I mean, let's not.
I think the director is being too kind.
I think
this is my last comment on this for today. Anyway, let's move on.
Me for what means.
I'm not crucified. You crucified yourself.
No, we are permutating. We felt something has to be done. Persons wrote, even the House of Rep member said, "Jam, stop for now." So what is wrong with that? She did wrong, but she's copying the society. That's what she's doing, and many are doing it, and it is wrong. That is it. So don't tell me to apologize to anybody for deceiving everybody like Mr. Master successfully did. So we conclude this segment, and we'll come back in a short while for the continuation of the program. All right, you are still on Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now, before our conversation commences, let's take a look at this background report as put together by Abdulsalam Jibril.
In 2021, the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, released a report where it stated that as a result of Nigeria's expensive governance structure, less than 30% of the federal government revenue were allocated to capital projects. Many experts say that the Commission's report validates the prevailing high cost of governance in Nigeria. Similarly, the 2011 Stephen Orosanye panel report on the proliferation of agencies and parastatals stated that the average cost of governance in Nigeria is believed to rank among the highest in the world. And if the cost of governance must be brought down, all arms of government must make spirited efforts at reducing their running costs. Comparatively, the United States has only 15 secretaries, that is Nigeria's equivalent to ministers, that run a country of over 250 million people. The British cabinet is smaller than that of Nigeria. Senegal has since abolished its Senate to save cost. Some countries, such as India, introduced e-governance in its administrative structure to reduce the cost of running its government. Similarly, Ethiopia, Thailand, Rwanda, Kenya, and Ghana have taken the bull by the horn by drastically reducing the number of political appointees. Some analysts note that if there is one persisting yet critical issue of national importance that must be frontally tackled, has to be that of drastically reducing the huge burden of the cost of governance. They maintain that it has become so debilitating it is weighing down the steps towards economic recovery. They also urge, along with effectively tackling corruption, political offices should be made less attractive. Government should discontinue provision of houses and vehicles to officers whose allowances are already monetized, among others. Will Nigeria take a cue from other countries towards taking drastic steps in cutting its costs of governance? This and more guests will be speaking to on the program shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Abdulsalam Jibril, for that background. Now we have guests at our network centers and also here in the Abuja studios. From Ibadan, we would like to welcome Dr. Abubakar Oladeji. He's an associate research professor and acting head of political and governance department at the Institute of Social and Economic Research, NISA, at Ibadan. Dr. Oladeji, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you very much for having me on the program this morning.
Thank you. And here with us in the Abuja studios, we'd like to welcome Dasuki Alabi, is the Director General, Bureau of Public Service Reforms. Mr. Alabi, we're glad you're here with us today.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians. Thank you for having us.
All right, and we go over to Jos now. That's where we have Engineer Solomon Chikan, retired civil servant, human productivity expert and founder of Entrepreneurs Resource Advisory Center. Thank you, sir, for reaching us from Jos.
Good morning, Nigeria, and thanks for having me.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We are expecting a professor to join us from Ayimba, that's in Kogi State. He's the Dean of the Faculty of Management Sciences at the Kogi State University. If we do have the setup cleared up by our engineers, we'll be advised, and then we'll welcome him accordingly to the conversation. But let's begin here in the studios with Dasuki Alabi, Director General, Bureau of Public Service Reforms. Often, when we hear of public service reforms, it would appear that the critical focus is on reform of processes and procedures to enhance productivity and therefore quality of service delivery. But little is often said about the high cost of governance that never appears to come down. We're saying this, of course, you represent the federal level, but at all levels of government, federal, state, and local. And the evidence is manifest in the view of some observers that there is very little left for real capital development. Why is this so, if it is true?
Well, thank you very much for asking this wonderful question. In the first place, we've been driving our reforms around a strategy that we call National Strategy on Public Service Reforms. It has 4 pillars. Pillar 1 is looking at the socio-economic environment of ministries, departments, and agencies. How do we fight corruption? How do we make it easy and simple for our customers to visit us, work with us without parting with a kobo or a dime? In the course of doing that, we are looking at digitalization of our processes in the ministries, departments, and agencies. Pillar 2 and 3 are looking at development of national plans. And we are glad to say that that gave birth to the ERGP program that ended, and the current national development plans. And the aim of that is to see that we hold people accountable against set targets and KPIs vis-a-vis the national development plan that we have built. Pillar 3 is looking at public financial management. What do we mean and what do we aim to achieve there? Public financial management, we say we have aimed or been aiming at digitalizing the process 100%. And the cause of doing that is, the reason for doing that is to see how what is done manually can be digitalized. In the course of doing that, we reduce cost of governance. Now, by our estimate, what we plan to do, we have digitalized public financial management 100%. Nobody uses paper and biro to run any business or transaction in any ministry. By doing that, the cost of delivering service, the cost of managing resources of government have been reduced. Example, Treasury Single Account says all monies of government must come into one account. Before this time, every ministry, department, and agency has account in commercial banks. Billions of naira or of amounts of money are being paid as bank charges and commissions to different banks, either in the federal, state, or local governments. We have eliminated that 100%. Think of it, Kingsley, 20 years ago, before you get your salary, you have to queue up, somebody will raise a voucher, somebody will raise a check, you go with the check to the bank. Now with the touch of a button, we carry out that process. That means the cost of printing vouchers, checks, and other things have all been eliminated in the process that we have come up with. Under public financial management, again, we introduced GIFMIS. GIFMIS says no person should use a paper to raise a voucher. Electronically, you raise voucher. Electronically, the authorizing officers authorize and make payments. And an ecosystem also developed around that place. Instead of NTA contacting road safety CAC to confirm whether potential contractors are registered with them, electronically the system goes to CAC, checks, and if you are okay. If you are not okay, it drops you. Now, the aim of doing that is looking at best practices. Kenya, India, United Kingdom reduce their cost of governance by digitalizing their processes and ways of delivering service. We may not be able to quantify what we have saved in terms of resources, but it's enormous. Somebody will ask, if it's enormous, who feels it? Now, let me go a little further and say, JAM used to pay remit 11 million naira to federal government. With digitalization of processes in line with this strategy, JAM remits 5 billion, 2 billion back to federal government. NITDA clears our ICT programs. Before, every ministry was buying computers every year, every minute, computers. Now, NITDA says, the policy says, bring your proposals. Let's check any justification. Apart from justification, an ecosystem again developed. Bureau for Public Procurement electronically checks and approves contractors who are licensed to sell these items to ministries, departments, and agencies. And there is a mark, a benchmark. If you are buying a computer, it should not be above so threshold. Now, NITDA, with that introduction, is able to save more than 300 billion naira in that sector. Right. Pillar 4 of that strategy has been looking at the core civil servants. How do we make ourselves more efficient? The more efficient we are, the less resources are wasted and utilized. You remember in 2006 we led the right sizing of ministries, departments, and agencies of government. There are transition, a secretary that is able to learn computer is upgraded to a data officer. The one that is not able to do that is exited. Now, recently we have introduced performance management to hold people responsible and accountable. And at the end of that, we will be seeing that nobody will ask carrier whether he's doing well or he's not well, because he has KPIs and somebody is monitoring you electronically. So at the end of the year, there will be no more automatic promotion for you. You have to meet your targets before you are promoted.
All right, sir. Let me just support you there. Because you are smoothly giving out, dishing out these explanations, beautiful explanations, and again, we have never been lacking, when it comes to articulating good documentations, geared towards policy implementation at the federal ministry level or parastatal level, and what have you. You have, dished out what you put on paper and what is being practiced at the moment, which is true, no doubt about that, but we still have situations where people still cut away funds. Some time ago, the AGF of the country, of course, was cost with billions of naira, and which was in the airwaves everywhere. And this is a custodian of the nation's resources. And there are also other cases like that we can mention, that people are doing. Of course, the former head of JAM is presently being prosecuted, for looting, and all of that. In spite of all these reforms that has been put in place that people should adhere to run, government to do is made. Yours is to develop the template, and to make it work is yet another. Thank you for the explanation. Now let's go to Jos, where we have Solomon Chekam, who's also a retired civil servant. Of course, he had experience over the years, having retired as a civil servant. I'm sure you're putting up to 35 years in this service. Now, looking at the cutting cost of governance, let's get your reading, of what has played out in Nigeria.
You hearing me? Yes, listening to DG, one will say, like you rightly said, truly we have all the policies, we have all that can be done. But I think the missing link, the reason for why we're having all these problems is the people, the implementers. It's really not about the strategy, but the implementers. So I would want to suggest one of the ways we need to go about doing this first is that, yes, we'll look at the strategy, how it is being done, but we need to focus on the implementers of the strategy. Because the technology, as good as it is, if you put it in the hands of a bad person, you'll get bad results. And so I would suggest that in addition to these beautiful programs that we've put in place, we need to look at the implementers, the people who are implementing these policies that we're talking about. Because the reason for the high cost of governance is because of the people involved.
Is it done?
Well,
Engineer Solomon, are you done? I think he's done.
Yeah, Kiri, I don't think so. It looks like there is a freeze. Oh, okay. Engineer Solomon, were you still continuing, or because the point you made was that yes, there is a strategy, but we have to look at the implementers of the strategy. And I just asked this straight away before we come back to the studios. Why would we be looking at the implementers of the strategy, and what in particular should we be watching out for?
Like I said, what the DG has said is the strategy on ground on ensuring that we reduce the cost of governance, which we have all agreed that is a problem. Given our situation that we are in, we need to really look at this issue of the cost of governance, because it will cause a lot of problems for us and it will continue to bring in problems. But like I said, the implementers of the strategy that the DG was talking about is where the problem is. Corruption is really as a result of the people who are involved. All these countries that we've talked about, that they have implemented different strategies, bringing in technology, bringing in non-paper use of issues and all the rest of them. At the end of the day, whether you use computers or use paper, if the people who are involved in implementing the strategy are corrupt, as we said, you will have problems. And so our problem is really not about the strategy per se, but the people involved.
Engineer Solomon Chikan, we'll come back to you at our Jos Network Center. Now, we understand that our Zoom guest is available. We'll link up with him now. Professor John Alabi is the Dean Faculty of Management Sciences at the Kogi State University in Abuja. He's also Chairman of Council of the Institute of Classic Entrepreneurship. Professor John Alabi, if you can hear us, good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. And straight away, I'll ask you this question so that we don't have any delays in your response before we pop our first question. We've been hearing now for well over a decade or more, cut the cost of governance, cut the cost of governance. Are we just paying lip service to reducing the cost of governance, or we are showing determination to actually prune the excessive cost of governance?
For having me. Good morning, Nigerian. Am I on?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. I'm saying that I want to agree entirely with you with the assertion that yes, we have developed strategies, policies for reducing cost of governance, but I want to say that we are paying just lip service. Why do I say that? Essentially, over the years, we have had pondered in discussion. Hey, the cost of governance is alarming, it's not sustainable, let's do something. What are the options? The various reforms. One, merge the NGAs, digitize the process, create effective public expenditure management strategy, ensure budget implementation, create orientation and student behavior in our. These are things that we know on paper all over the years. how well are we on top of this situation? I want to agree when Didi said, oh, we are digitized. Digitization is a good thing. But where you are automating a system and you have 1,000 staff doing a manual job, and you still have the 1,000 staff still on one side, still there in the system, what are we talking about? Again, people are coming up. We had corruption in the past that are in thousands and millions. Now, corruption are in billions and trillions. Why are we saying that? So I think essentially we have not significantly addressed the issue of cost of governance. Over the years, we have been talking about, reducing it. Again, you need to know that cost of governance has two variables. Yes, capital, recurrent. Our recurrent has been high, but the recurrent has two components, personnel costs and overheads. Even when you do so much about some aspect of personnel and you're not doing so much about the overhead, you have the same problem. So my take is that we have a problem at hand and we must address it. The nations that have done that have gone the line of walking their talk. If you merge ministries, then create avenue where those who are going to be off will find something to do. If you digitize your processes, you should not have the same number of people still hanging around trying to create on the system. If you want to have government policies, for instance, look at the issue of monetization, government monetization policy. Over the years, some persons in government are still living in government houses. They are still riding government vehicles, even when we have put on place on hold all those. What I say is that effective implementation is very important. Then we have to move towards that, and it cuts across the entire gamut. So this kind of governance, we talk of e-governance, and we are looking at Kenya, we're looking at Rwanda, we're looking at those who are done. What have they done? They went ahead and said, yes, you match some ministries. Yes, make sure that those who are going off the system are either laid off. If you are not laid off, settle them as it were. Then make sure that if you are doing digitization is there is corruption even in procurement system these days. A lot of agencies are there. Look at our recruitment processes. Our IPPS is bedeviled with corruption. I know people who are in IPPS who are not supposed to be there. Some have been taking salary for months. These are critical issues. So digitization or digitization, we must walk our talk. For me, we have policy on ground, but we are not working our talk. I hope the new administration will do that so that these policies, they are out there. We don't need new policies. They are all there. 7 of them are there. MDA Maja, political office holders are still there. We still have large political officers. Sir, how do you talk about a senator or a speaker having 100 special advisors or special assistants, the governor having 300 special advisors, advising on what? These are creating jobs for the boys. So if you can look at those 7 points that is in that reform and we address it, frontally it works. Merge MDAs, reduce, make public office more less attractive, make sure that you implement digitization policy, ensure that government monetary policy is implemented to the core, and ensure that there's effective public expenditure management, and of course, budget implementation and discipline. In this country, our budgets are still rituals. We don't follow it. And when people flout budget, what do? The last Canadian operation went away with billions of naira with all the checks and balances they said they have in that ministry. It doesn't work that way. Then, of course, attitudinal change. Right? From all levels, all tiers of government and the MDAs, we need to have all done. Because at the state level, that high level of corruption and a high level of indiscipline, I can see that budgets are passed in the assembly in a jiffy. I've seen state assembly where budgets are passed in less than 30 minutes. And monitoring is not even there. So I think if you can do this work, but I believe that we are not doing enough. The administration should do what to make sure that we address governance. It is very important. It is a problem. It is not sustainable. And you must know this. I think it's on the sidelines, sir. We must realize that the cost of governance now is being accentuated now by other variables, external variables. Inflation will continue to soar high. You should know that our debt burden itself is not helping the cost of governance. All right? What about our income generation level? This is the nation that will expend so much, and we're trying to get enough resources. As long as we do that, of course, we work. Even population. So these are externalities that will continue to fuel the cost of governance. But we must take drastic measures on those reforms. implement them and be managing inflation, be managing our debt burden, be managing our revenue, and ensure that population is kept under check. If we do all this, I think cost of government will go down. But for me, political office holders' salaries and their perquisite are on the high side. We must do something about it.
Thank you so much, Professor Alabi, Dean Faculty from Management Sciences in Kogi State University. We appreciate your submissions this morning. And joining us, we had earlier introduced him, is Dr. Abubakar Oladiji. Dr. Oladiji is Associate Research Professor and Acting Head, Political and Governance Policy Department, Nigerian Institute of Social and Economic Research, NISA, Ibadan. So it's a pleasure to have you once again back with us for your question. Now, you've listened to Professor Alabi, and he raised a number of points, and needless going back to that. But what we know today is that in Nigeria, even those who have left power are still utilizing government properties, cars, buildings, and other accessories. And of course, some of the newly sworn-in governors are battling to recover government property. They are even enforcing it and so on. And this did not start today. It's like a phenomenon in governance that, look, if you have once served, you have to milk the government till you die. That's why governors have pensions, huge pensions for that matter. And in their states, there are pensioners who have not been paid for years. Yet a governor, ex-governor will be taking pensions and humongous amount of money, and people are sustaining it in various states across this country, and they're justifying it because they went to the houses of assembly to get it into the law of the state, and many more things like that. Now, what is your take on how we should begin to reduce the cost of governance in Nigeria in all strata of government?
Let me appreciate you for this important question on this issue of reducing the cost of governance in Nigeria. Let me begin by saying that the size or height of the cost of governance in Nigeria is a derivative of the expansive governance structure adopted by the country. Nigeria is a federal presidential democracy, and we all know the implication of each of these themes: federalism, the multi-layer tiers. The presidential system itself is costly. Of course, democracy is not less expensive. All of these are the reasons why we have what is on ground. And I want to say that there are drivers of the cost of governance in Nigeria, which we have to really put in perspective. The first driver is the constitutional issue. The fact that the Constitution mandates or make it mandatory for the composition of the office or government of the Federation to reflect the federal character of the country, meaning that all the states, indigenous of different, all the states must be represented. Then you also have the structural. In all tiers of government, you have this structural issue. You have at executive level, you have the structures. At the legislative level, you have the bicameral legislature, the Senate and the Rep, with all these various committees. Even in the judicial system, you have the hierarchy of the court and everything. So all of these are actually, they are the drivers. But I think in my own take, maybe reflecting the study that has just been recently concluded in NISA, we have a long way to go, and we need the political will to be able to do it. Let me start from the most fundamental, which is the concept of developmental states. Nigeria leaders must entrench and enforce the concept of developmental state, meaning that everything that is not tied to development should not be done. Whatever we do in all our activities, the focus must be on how to develop the polity, how to develop the society. So that all this issue about poverty is on the increase, whatever, will be out when we have that, when we imbibe the concept of developmental state. I also agree with the DG, and to a large extent with the last speaker, Professor Ajayi, on certain things that need to be done. For instance, there's also need for expenditure programming. The real thing where we have the cost that we are talking about is the phenomenon of waste. There are quite a lot of wastages in the system. We do things, it is Professor Ajayi I was talking, or is the DG talking about multiple people doing the same thing, wasting resources, wasting time. If we do expenditure programming, some low profile expenditure will not make it, will be dropped, then we'll save cost. This is very critical because the money we are talking about here is actually non-existent. Maybe we should also talk about the reason why people are actually agitating about the size, which is the imbalance, this terrible imbalance between recurrent and the capital expenditure. The belief is that if we have more money channeled to capital, the indicator, development indicator, HDI, all of those indicators will have a positive, a sign, because enough of resources will be used in developing them. But what we have in this situation is that since 2000 up to the present moment, the imbalance is such that even there are times when you have up to 80% of the budget allocated to the recurrent, which has been broken down into personnel and overhead. So what do you do when you have very little to develop? It was even bad at the point we were even taking loan. Up to now we have huge foreign and domestic loan to fund development. These are all critical issues that must be done. Then we also need to imbibe what we call efficiency principle. Efficiency principle means that you adopt a cost-benefit analysis in whatever you want to do. What is the cost? What is it going to cost us? How much can you weigh the cost and the benefits and determine which one actually has the upper weight? Then if that is the yardstick, a lot of wastages will be, will be eliminated. Then we also need to, like the DG said, the issue of uptake of technology is very critical. We can't just hide, you can't just pretend that we want to be doing things manually. Technology is so important that it can take the job of, you can do the job of 20 men even in 20 minutes. And then you are saving cost. So we need to really put all hands on deck and be determined that we want to develop. The development is something that will not just come accidentally. It has to be planned for. And of course, you need resources to develop. We see other countries that we are at par, we were at the same level very many years ago, where they are today. Many of them have left the toga of third or developing country. They are competing in Serie A. They are competing in A-League. Whereas Nigeria is still competing at the level, just because so we need to do things right. More importantly is that concept of the elevator state. Everybody must be ready to develop this entity called Nigeria. So I think that's my point for now.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Alabi, for the very useful ideas that you have raised in the course of this interaction. We'll come back to you to get some more. But let's return to the studios where Dasuki Alabi, Director General, Bureau of Public Service Reforms, has been listening very attentively to the comments by the other guests. DG Alabi, let's just get your reaction to the slate of issues that have been raised by the other guests in terms of, well, we're paying lip service, then the fact that there are also structural issues that we have to deal with, plus the other points that they have made, that corruption remains endemic in the system. And yes, you have set up a strategy, but how do we look at the implementers?
Well, thank you very much, Kingsley. I want to respond first to my friend, Kieran, when he spoke about the issue of corruption, despite all the reforms and the changes. The only thing permanent in life is change. And as you are building a house, the next thing you'll be looking at is maintenance. Whether the roof is leak-proof, whether there are leakages in the pipes and other things. So we are developing, we are growing over the time. If our audience would just recall, 30 years ago, you walk into a ministry and they will say, Kingsley and Brothers Enterprises. You submit your invoice, somebody will give you a contract. In less than 20 minutes, you are paid. The changes, the transformation that have brought has stopped that. It's impossible for anybody to do that.
So I can't do it now.
You cannot. No, you cannot do that. So while we are trying to reform the system, we are trying to be more transparent and open the system so that we avoid corruption before it even happens. Because there are checks and balances. There is an ecosystem around procurement and management of resources that one person cannot just sit down and do it. The strategy pillar 4 is looking at cultural reorientation. One of the guests online spoke about that. We are leading that reorientation to see how people appreciate the position they found themselves as government workers. There are 210 or 205 million Nigerians, and all of us on the payroll of Federal Republic of Nigeria, excluding the states and local governments, were about 2.7 million. In the main civil service, there are about 130,000 or so. So we should consider ourselves as privileged Nigerians that have been given this opportunity to work for our motherland. Now, if we have that as a takeaway, I think a lot of the problems and challenges that we're facing will be wiped out. Now, the professor from Kogi State spoke about policies that are not implemented. As students of history, you remember that in 2006, 2007, there was massive right-sizing in the public service. Ministries were merged, agencies were merged, some staff were disengaged, and they were paid off. That laid the foundation of this transformation that we've been driving over the years. When you look at monetization policy, it says, let's get this burden off the head of government. But then today we have seen staff of NTA or Radio Nigeria driving all the way from Akwanga to come and present news in the morning, instead of them walking to their houses very close to their premises. That means the reforms that we're introducing over time need to be reformed or to be readjusted. And that is why in the course of our work, every year we do impact assessments and perception surveys of the reforms we have initiated, implementation level, and what are the results. And we get back to rework on what we've done. So if somebody will say nothing has been done, we have the policies, I think that is wrong. The prof from Ibadan spoke about the democracy we are driving and other things. That is true. It's very expensive for us, and that is a discussion that is beyond us here. That will call for review of the constitution, rejigging the whole system, and asking ourselves whether we need all those bogus size of government that we're driving or not. But on our part, as an agency in charge of reforms, we have tried as much as we can to unbundle the system, open the system, makes it more transparent. People are held more accountable. When he said that people are still using official cars and official houses, we are not aware of that. As far as our records are that we have, few officers, the president, the vice president, and few others are still entitled to accommodation. Beyond that, every chief executive or head of agency that is occupying a house paid by government is on his own. We have exception in the universities and the teaching hospitals, in the medical centers, colleges of education, and other institutions where quotas are there. They've not been disposed of. So certainly the workers of the university or medical center have access to those facilities. But in our budget, you cannot have a subhead that says payment of rent for Director General NTA. It is not available. Now, when we go back to budget process has transited from analog to digital. Apart from digitalization of the process, in line with the Freedom of Information law and the OGP commitment of Nigeria, civil society have been given the space to participate in preparing our budget, checking performance of our budget, and asking questions. You recall that over the time, our agency have been engaging with a lot of civil society groups to encourage them to check our processes, get back to us, and tell us what they think we need to do differently, where we need to improve. As I leave this place, I have an engagement with civil society, and we're discussing budget. When you get to the website of Budget Office, you will virtually be able to see everything about your budget. Yes.
I'm not pausing you yet. You're going to continue because you said that there are activities that you do not know that takes place. You know, from what our guest just about a race a short while ago. You know, I mean, it's almost becoming a ritual that Nigerians regard government property or government, infrastructure as something, it doesn't belong to anybody. And again, if you can cut away as much as you can, fine. You have done beautiful reform system or strategy, right? And but what we don't know is whether you have a mechanism, through which you now engage the implementers, as my colleague highlighted in his question, to say, how do you now monitor the implementers? Because what you say you don't know about, they exist, as a matter of fact. If you go to ministries today, you will see so many cars parked. Some of them may just be brake pads, some of them may just be tire, but they've been there, parked there for over the years. They've changed it already to a brand new one, procured from Japan, for instance. When we have local manufacturers of cars, if we're talking about reduction of in the cost of governance in the country, you see them parading cars that are worth about 50, 60, 70 million for one person. And again, a Hilux or 2 or 3 Hilux, following the man behind, carrying some hugely armed, policemen and what have you. So, in the computer aspect you talked about, fine. But India and other countries you talked about did this over 40 years ago. So it's not probably a plus, because we were just doing it yesterday and have perfected in it. Today, India is a hub of ICT globally as we speak, and so on. So this is a syndrome and a conundrum, if you like, because we couldn't get out of it. Remember, there was a time in this country we were talking about a new consciousness. That's the former Buhari Idiabo regime. New consciousness. Nigeria, a new consciousness. And if you are in the reform system and what you are reforming is not yielding positive results as far as society is concerned, then that is a problem. What is that problem?
Okay. I want to take you back again to history, where the former Minister of Finance raised a team that went around and looked at all unserviceable assets of government. And a policy statement was made. Those assets must be disposed so that government will get some monies out of it instead of just abandoning them there. Beyond that, we came up with the idea of creating efficiency unit within Federal Minister of Finance. And circulars were issued out to MDAs highlighting cost limits, avoidable expenditure, and red lines around that. Example, no government ministry is allowed to use government resources to hire a hall in a hotel to run their program. That is why in BPSR, if we are doing our programs, you will see us using Minister of Finance conference hall, FCDA conference hall, Minister of Justice conference hall. And this applies to all MDAs. And then it gave a cap on expenditure limits to say if NTA is organizing a program that will take its guests from 9 to 2 p.m., you provide tea and lunch break. And the limit says tea break should not be more than 1,500. Lunch should not be more than 2,500. You cannot charge more than 2,500 and somebody will approve that voucher. Even if you do it in your ministry or in your agency, the overriding authority in Ministry of Finance and Office of Accountant General will not approve that. So there are checks and balances, just as somebody said, linked to efficiency unit to see how can we improve management of our resources. How can we reduce expenditure that is not high. Now, when you spoke about vehicles, policy says no official vehicles, but chief executives are entitled to official vehicles for official use only, while project officers have project vehicles for management of their projects and office errands and others. If somebody has 4 jeeps, 5 Prado jeeps, I am not aware of that. I cannot speak of that. But I know clearly there's a directive of government that controls that and says you cannot.
So whether it's obeyed or not is a different matter altogether.
Yeah, well, I don't want to say that, but what I want Nigerians to appreciate, and all of us, is if we look at Nigerian public service 25 years ago and we look at it today, you agree with us that we have moved as a nation. I want to tell you, Mr. Kerian, that hardly will a month pass that we don't receive a delegation from outside Nigeria that is coming to understudy how we are driving reforms and implementing reforms in different sectors in Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Dasuki Alabi, thank you very much. I mean, the last point you just raised with regard to delegations coming to understudy our system is a useful one, but it's also a familiar tale. We know what happened with palm oil. We know how much we are spending today in importing palm oil from all corners of the globe. Those that came here to come and understudy our palm plantations are today having upstream, midstream, and downstream sectors in their palm oil, not crude oil, palm oil industry. So the whole idea of this conversation is to say, look, how do we improve? How do we get things? You're welcome back, and we thank you for being with us still on Good Morning Nigeria, live on NTA's network service from our Abuja headquarters studios. I want to return to Dr. Abubakar Oladeji of NISA at our Ibadan network studios. Dr. Oladeji, you listened to the explanations by the DG of the Bureau of Public Service Reforms. And very interestingly, he's been raising all the points about the reforms that were initiated by the Obasanjo administration in 2006, monetization. The whole idea at the end of the day was to save costs. Government, for instance, was spending so much money maintaining government guest houses, maintaining government structures and government buildings, as well as official cars that were all over the place. But more than 15 years since the policy was enunciated, what are we seeing? Are we seeing the gains from that exercise, or we are observing a bypass of what the gains were supposed to have been? In other words, because as the DG explained, officers who are in charge of projects can have project vehicles to be utilized purposely for that project. But you can bet, go to any of the markets now, you probably see a so-called project vehicle where they are loading yams and plantain. And so you see some of those vehicles being used for school run and all kinds of abuses in the system. What is it that we can do to return to the original intendment of the 2006 reforms that were kick-started? That's one. And secondly, probably the bigger elephant in the room that we haven't talked about, political appointees and elected political officers. What can be done about them and the needless costs that they create for governance?
This is a double barrel, but very interesting set of questions. I will try to answer them maybe together. I want to align with the DGBP that to say that there has not been progress in terms of the reform is to miss the point. There have been incremental progress, but it's just that we have not yet reached the desired destination. And what should we do? It is about engagement. It's about going into reform. But the challenge with this reform thing is that how do we ensure the buy-in of the stakeholders, the critical stakeholders? For instance, virtually all the drivers of high cost of governance are issues that are related to legal, they are constitutional issues. So, and you will require the concurrence of the members of the National Assembly to approve some of the reforms plan. Are they ready to go along with this? Then, in the drivers, I mentioned constitutional, I mentioned structural. The operational is the main thing. Somebody raised the issue about the numerous number of aides. Yeah, we discovered that in one of the studies that a particular state governor had more than 200 aides. All of them will be, taking money from the coffers of government. No constitution stipulates that. Nigerian constitution does not stipulate this number. But you now have the personal idiosyncrasies of leaders. So how do you address that? I like the seminal work by Stephen Decker, that Oxford guy who wrote about gambling on development. And his conclusion is that for development to happen, elites must commit to development. You even call it class suicide. The communist class suicide, they do what they are not used to, or they are not known for. They take a decision that they want to develop. So we need the buy-in of the elites. Critically, is very important. For everything you want to do, you will refer to the parliament. If they are not in support, it will be seen that it will not be passed. Laudable idea like this, that's why it is a good time for this kind of discourse. We have a new set of leaders at the different levels of government. And if a proper orientation is done and the buy-in is there, all of these issues can actually be tracked out. Wastages, like I mentioned earlier on, is the main cost for the high cost of governance. It can be eliminated. It can be eliminated if we do what we need to do. Efficiency principle is key. If you apply that to even the wages and allowances, you pay people according to performance. I don't know who mentioned the fact that you can actually pay people on the basis of number of hours done. Are we saying all the civil servants justifying their pay? And you have so many of them. But I'm not saying that they are the cause. They are not. They are part of the issue. The real issue is the leader. When the leader commits to development, development will happen. And the example that you gave, in the book by that gentleman, he did a comparative analysis of some countries. India, Brazil, Mexico. Some of these countries actually share certain similarity with Nigeria in terms of heterogeneity, in terms of the ethnic composition, in terms of the large size, and the conclusion is that these countries, this set of countries, moved on. they were able to engage, they were able to increase the pace of development. Another set of countries could not, because they refused to do what the first set did. Reform is key in all of this, and it's just the right way to go. I don't know how we are going to start it. It has to start. We have to do reform, save cost, save money. So that let's try to reverse the imbalance between recurrent and capital. If it is 75-25 now, in the short while we'll be talking of 55-45. But the ideal thing will have been 60-40 or even 70-30 in the other way. Let the capital have as much.
Your contribution, the NASA DG, we thank you indeed. We're trying to manage time at this point in time, so we can accommodate others before concluding this edition of the program. And we go to Professor John Alabi once more, the Dean Faculty of Management Sciences at Kogi State University, who once spoke to us via Zoom. I'm sure he's there. All right, Professor Alabi, you've listened to others a while ago, and we are here now looking for remediations, what can be done. And I know it's not going to be easy, because according to the last speaker, he just said that development does not just happen. It has to be planned, designed, conceptualized, and diligently followed structure to enable it to happen. And that is what civil service reforms has been able to do. But now we're talking about implementers, and of course making sure that we are getting results. Now, the Stephen Orasanya report contains everything that could change for good governance in Nigeria. Merging of some agencies who are duplicating responsibilities. They are there, and we know. Yet this report has not been implemented by any government since it was made public. What's your take on that? Will it also be a way to ensure that we cut down on governance? Or are there other measures that the nation should take to reverse the trend, as it were?
Well, thank you very much. I want to quickly state here that I have not stated that there have not been improvement. Of course, life is about improvement. What I'm interrogating is in the public space that the DG talked about. All right? How can we measure where we were then and now? The issue is critical. We need to look at quantitative and qualitative improvement. So 4 steps forward and 6 steps backwards is not improvement, and that's what we're interrogating. That's why NTA is bringing this up. 1, the critical things about reforms to reduce cost of governance. And when you have a reform that is not producing the desired result, maybe that reform needs a reform. That is 1. It's just like a strategy. The strategy that you have adopted over the years is not working. That strategy requires another. He alluded, and I'm happy that Karen and both of you there alluded to that fact. On paper, there is a monetization policy. I speak truth, I lie not. And you are aware, all over the place, people are still staying in government houses. People are still parading cars. Let me shock you, and you need to know. What you have in MDAs, in some agencies and parastaff, let me tell you, it's simple. You have a board that's put in place, and you want to purchase cars for yourself. All they do is they approve for the board and they approve for the management. Rub my back, I rub your back, and nothing happens. And your policy will remain in the shelf, saying that we have monetized government. It is not true. A reality on ground is that we must visit the MDAs and know what is happening. So our strategy needs a strategy, because we're not getting the right result. There must be effective monitoring. We talk of public expenditure management. My take is simple. You see, today you will say you are engaging civil society. We do a lot of talk. We go down in the midst and you see it is not working as we are talking about. government will have to sit and stand up and have that. At the point in time, in civil society balance, we said we want to be engaged in the budget process and we want to do monitoring, effective implementation. The wastages that you talk about can be blocked, but you know that they will not want. There are a lot of inbuilt inefficiency in all the budgets we have. And so along the line, you start saying it. The other one you talk about is reducing cost of governance. Yes, some of them are constitutional. I think we'll go for the low-hanging fruits for a start. If you want to go the hog of many constitutions, of course, it will be a challenge. But we can do moral suasion for all the levels of government. This is the reality on ground. This is what people elected are saying. Can you go back and start looking at your wastages and excesses that you can trim your budget? National Assembly, State Assembly, State Government, Local Government, MDAs, please come down. Let's do more. Some of them are, yes, you cannot do it because it is constitutional. The structure of governance in this country is something like here, I agree. But you can do more restoration and agree to their conscience. Another area I'm talking about is that we need to look at our political office holders. It is not constitutional that you must have 300. Why must you have 300? You need to do it. Look, let me shock you, sir. A governor will have 50 special advisors, 100 senior special assistants, another 100 special assistants. Then you have 8. If you have 20 local government, some people have 20, 30, 40, 100, about 1,000 aides, all on the coffers of the government. These are areas. Don't look at the federal alone. Let's look at the subnational too. So cost of governance is extremely high. I'm also shocked at times when I read from papers and I see awards in Abuja. Oh, in budget transparency, the state comes first and second. And I visit those states and I say to people, where are the issue we're talking about here? We must be careful, sir, that what we do.
Professor Alabi, thank you very much for the very vital points that you have raised. As we said, this isn't just a conversation about the national government. We're also looking at the subnational governments, even though we've not had the opportunity of drilling essentially into that. When you talk about government officials still occupying government buildings, I'm sure you remember that, say, at the federal level, when Obasanjo, as president, introduced the monetization policy, there was the owner-occupier basis. There was the first refusal principle for the occupier. In other words, if you were a civil servant or a public servant and you were occupying a government building, you had a first refusal to buy, and then you had also access to a mortgage. If you could, you did, but if you couldn't, then somebody else will take it over. That's why if you go to Ikoyi today, most if not all of those federal government houses are all gone, and unfortunately part of what has happened is that everywhere you see in Ikoyi now, high rise, turning it virtually into a mega slum. But that's the way it is. But official cars that you mentioned, or abuse of cars, that's one is noted. But let's go very quickly to Jos and bring in again Engineer Solomon Chikan. Engineer Solomon, of course, you've been listening to all of this, and some of the points you raised earlier on have also been addressed, but it continues to linger. You say, look, there is a strategy, but the implementers of the strategy, cutting corners or bypassing the rules or bypassing what the benefits ought to be to the system, people continue to get benefits that are near to themselves, and at the end of the day, when you do the numbers, we still find that the cost of governance remains high. What should we do?
My brother, the truth is that we've all talked about these issues, and we know that we are in a mess right now, because even if we continue with the high costs, we are getting to a point where we can't sustain the system anymore. And so for our own sake, for us to survive, we really need to answer the question, what should we do? And as you rightly said, right from the word go, our problem is not strategy. Because we've gotten all the strategies, we've gone all over the world to copy what others have done. And yet, when we come in here, we can't implement them. So, as I said again, please, we need to look at the implementers. And that is that we must come up with a strategy of getting onto the people. Because if you get the case of governors or some other people in the government now having how many thousand advisors and they are paying from government system, at the end of the day, if the money is no more there, they cannot pay these people any longer. Then the whole system comes to a stop. So as the DG said, thank God that they have these strategies on ground, but we really need to look at the implementers. I'm stressing that because some of us have been to other countries to find out why are we where we are today. And we came back, or we came to the conclusion that the problem is not about the strategy, the problem is not about the weather or the environment, the problem is the people. And so please, this is something that we must look at very seriously, the implementers of.
Engineer Solomon Chicken, thank you. You've just nailed it. You know, when you talked about computer, the computer, you know, is garbage in, garbage out. You know, if you have to pay somebody who is not a staff of an institution, you'll engage the computer and infuse the name there, and computer continues to pay and what have you. So to do a final talk on this, what should we look out for? Because in public service that you are heading, we know what is going on. Some governors are paid. They said it's pension and it's huge. Is it accommodated in this public service reform system that such persons should be paid? Some of them are in the National Assembly, also being paid by Senate or House of Reps, yet they're also being paid pensions after being serving as governor for 8 years.
Well, thank you very much. I want to respond to Professor Alabi.
Briefly, because
yes. At the federal level, no government official is allowed to stay in any government house except the president, vice president, and few officials,
including
like the inspector. Yes,
speaker.
Including Senate president and the speaker. So if they're having these challenges of people staying in government-paid quarters, I think that should be in the states, and that is why the Bureau has been looking at how do we get the states to buy into the reforms that we're driving. And I must commend President, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We worked with him as governor of Lagos State to reform Lagos public service. And they have set up the Down Commission, which the Bureau is working with to reform the public service in Southwest. Recently, Ogun State created their own Bureau of Public Service reforms, and they are following our trends. Gombe State have done that, and Kaduna State. Now, my takeaway is, for us to reduce cost of governance, every citizen must be proud to be a Nigerian. He must join the campaign of reorientation to buy what we produce what we buy, eat what we produce what we eat, be conscious of our nation, and that it's a child that is given to us to tender. We must work together, put our hands on the desk.
Today, because there's no time.
Yes.
Are you not aware of the governors taking expensive, what I call the huge takeaways as pensions? Is it allowed by the public service reform? Let's get an idea.
Well, okay. Now, you know, we have 3 federating units. We have the federal government, the states, and the local governments. The pensions and their entitlements, these are the prerogative of the states. The state assemblies sat down, they agreed and approved that for them. So it has nothing to do with federal government per se. But if we're able to get them to buy into the reforms we're driving, we're confident they will attend to us, they will listen and reason with us, looking at the socio-economic problems that we're facing to either reduce or eliminate some of those.
All right, thank you very much, Nasuki Alabi, Director General, Bureau for Public Service Reforms, of course, of the federal government. We'd like to appreciate you for the comments that you have made and the insights that you have provided. This is a continuing conversation because we couldn't possibly have exhausted all the ramifications of reducing the cost of governance. Similarly, we'll appreciate our other guests who were with us from Just we're joined by Engineer Solomon Chikan, a retired civil servant and human productivity expert. Thank you very much for being our guest today.
Thank you very much.
From Ayimba, where he is Dean, Faculty of Management Sciences at the Kogi State University. Appreciation goes to Professor John Alabi, who was with us via Zoom. Professor Alabi, thanks immensely. From Ibadan, that's our network center. I will thank Associate Research Professor and Acting Head, Political and Governance Policy Department of NISA. That is the Nigerian Institute of Social and Economic Research. That's the foremost research institute, Dr. Abubakar Oladeji. Dr. Abubakar Oladeji, thanks for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. All right, so let's see if we can take any one or two of our segments before we call